Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stewart Andrew Alexander.
Hi, and welcome to another Let's Talk Divorce conversation. And on this segment of the show, I have family law attorney Mendy White from the law office of Menachem M. White LLC, who is calling in all the way from Brooklyn, New York. Now, Mendy has a wealth of experience in the area of family law, and especially in divorce and peaceful settlement. And we'll be talking to you today about how to make peace and protect children in divorce. So let's not keep him waiting any longer and bring him onto the show. Welcome, Mendy. Are you there?
Good morning. How are you?
Yes, I am great, Mendy. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to come and speak with us today. So,
thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. So let's jump feet first in then, Mendy. Can you briefly describe the people you serve and the kinds of situations they find themselves in when they come to you for help?
Unfortunately, I find I meet people at the lowest of their lives a lot of times because they are receiving a situation they invested their lives into has come to an end, and they may be going through a domestic violence situation, or maybe just something has occurred and the marriage has had to end. Unfortunately, domestic violence is a common issue. Thankfully, it's not that common. Maybe 30% of my cases are domestic violence issues, which is still very high, obviously, unfortunately, but I look at it as at least 70% of my clients are not victims in that regard, or at least they don't tell me they are. And they come because they're scared and they're nervous and they don't know what to do because the system is so large and they don't know how to go through the system. They need someone who knows it well to guide them through it. And it's funny because before you came in today, I had a young man come into my office who was terrified. And he did not know the system. He did not know what to do. And I explained to him the situation. I explained to him that it's not scary, it's just bureaucratic. You just have to let me guide him through it, and he should be okay. But they're also scared of what's going to happen with the children. Will the children stay with them? Will they lose the children? It's a lot.
So it must be really daunting when somebody has to turn around and think, oh my goodness, I've got to go through a divorce, or oh my goodness, my partner is divorcing me. So with that said then, Mendy, what are some of the most common misconceptions surrounding the topic of divorce, and especially when it comes to making peace and protecting children in divorce?
Well, the first one is you don't have to fight over everything. Some people fight over the smallest and insignificant things. Example is, I saw something recently about how a judge ordered the parties that the parents cannot be told to call the other one bad names. People are very petty sometimes because it's in a very emotionally charged, emotionally and physically draining situation that they're in. And unfortunately, the worst parts of us come out at that time. I tell my clients that the best situation is, people know this from business, when you have a negotiation, whether you're buying something or not, when the only people who should walk away from the negotiation table on divorce are the attorneys, because they got paid. Because you have to lose something in a negotiation. You can't. If you had everything you wanted, your attorney was much better than the other ones, in my experience. Except for the fact where people just say, I don't want this, just take it and leave me alone, because they're just so sick and tired of the situation that they're in.
based on what you just shared with us, Mendy, and obviously, unless you have permission to share names, please keep client confidentiality in mind. Can you share with us a case study or a short story of how you've helped someone who came to you with those misconceptions that we've just spoke about, and what transformational results you were able to gain for them?
Well, obviously, before I go do that, I will change sex and locations for those purposes. If I say it happened in Brooklyn, it probably had in Staten Island or Queens. All sexes and locations have been changed for confidentiality purposes. Yeah, had a young woman whose husband was unfortunately not well, physically and emotionally, and she unfortunately had to get an order of protection against her husband. And this occurred in Brooklyn. Because of that, we got a custody order for her for the 5 children. After that, I discussed with her husband's attorney a way of settling the case. Is that we get rid of the order of protection, but because of the husband's inability to take care of the children on his own, which he admitted to based on his mental issues, he would have supervised visitation when he's outside the home. But in the home, he would watch the kids on his own. And thank God we were able to settle in that case in the next few months. But we've reached a final agreement because, in that case, the wife came to me having no idea, terrified of the situation, and now this case is going to settle within a year, which, to be honest, is a pretty fast settlement in that regard, because some of these cases I just had a case that went to trial, and it started in 2013. And we just gave in our final papers to the judge after a full trial. So these cases can go very quickly or very slowly,
depending on who is willing to negotiate. I would think. Yeah,
the case I had that I had in New York involved religion, custody, child support. It was very heavy, and I could not settle that case, unfortunately. As hard as I tried, I couldn't do it. Because in the end of the day, as I said, settlement is the idea that everyone walks away unhappy. If I had settled the way that they wanted me to, my client would have walked away with nothing.
Right.
And I couldn't do that to her. So she's better off for it, thank God. So it worked out nicely.
Awesome. So taking the main topic of protecting children in divorce into consideration, then, Mendy, please share one, let's say, an unknown pitfall that they might not be aware of but should be aware of. If you could share that with us, please, that would be great.
Do not discuss the case with the children.
Wow,
ever.
That seemed very, very clear on that one. Repeat that one again, please.
Do not discuss anything that happens in the case with the children.
Okay, go ahead. Explain why.
Because what happens is, no matter how much you try, children are going to take sides. Because one parent is going to say, Daddy didn't do this. Mommy went to court and lied saying that you said this. And unfortunately, as stated before, family court and Supreme Court, depending on what you're going for in the courts, are very argumentative, and there's a reason that it's the best thing to have an attorney there, because the attorneys can be emotionally disconnected, is what one hopes that you have. And parties who talk about the case of their children are not automatically going to put themselves in the best light possible, because no father is going to go to their son and say, oh yeah, Mommy accused me of beating her in front of you. What he's usually said, in my experience, is that Mommy lied and said I beat her up in front of you. So whether, one, did Daddy do it, and secondly, did Daddy just call Mommy a liar? So whether he did it or not is irrelevant. Now he's Daddy mouthed Mommy in front of the children. And now the children are now in the middle of the case, which is never, ever good for them, emotionally or physically. And I've seen children, unfortunately, who have become suicidal because of the situation between the parents. where they were hospitalized because of the parents' divorce. And it's horrifying, it's depressing and sad to watch, and it doesn't matter their age. But because of the length of these marriages and the length of these divorces, especially, children are the ones who suffer the most.
Yeah, I can totally concur with what you're saying, Mendy. I mean, I've been on the end of that, being a divorced child myself, and having experienced a very volatile marriage and a breakup with violence at home, not towards myself, but between my parents. And so just for somebody who's sitting out there listening to this right now, what Mendy just shared with you, I can tell you from, and I'm 54 years old right now, that's still at this stage in my life, I'm still affected by those visions, those memories that I had when I was 12, 13 years old. So if you find yourself in that situation, please do adhere to that pitfall that Mendy just shared with us, because it's so true. The children are so vulnerable. So irrespective of if your partner has cheated on you or how unfair things may seem, please try to remain subjective when it comes to your children, because they're the ones that are most vulnerable. So thanks so much for sharing that unknown pitfall, Mendy. That's very, very insightful and useful for the listener out there right now.
And I will add one more thing, especially, is that when a divorce starts, the parties and the children especially should be put into therapy immediately, because at least the children have someone to talk to about it. If it's group therapy, if it's whatever, it's a necessity in my experience, because if not, the children are going to hold all that anger in, and it's going to burst. Because some children hide their fears, their distrust, their depression, and nobody knows what they're going through. And they need to find a way. Is it going to help them automatically? Of course not. Nothing is that easy. But if the parents that I've seen, because I've seen both sides, I've seen the selfish parents who have been my clients, who have been other side, both obviously, and I've had the clients who are caring and loving, and one of them are both sides. If they love their children, they settle the case. And the case I told you with the mother and the father being unwell, the mother and father agreed that the father is unwell. He is. There's no question. He is an AA and NA, and he's been trying to get help. And the mother accepts that. This is why it's going to be a peaceful resolution, because the children love their parents. And the parents refuse to badmouth each other. The parents are good parents, except the father has his issues. But it's agreed upon. But because of that, the children are in therapy, and the children are taken care of. And thankfully, I've met these children, and the children seem to be very well off. And it's all because of how respectful and mature the parents are to each other. If you act like an adult, the children are far more likely to survive and be productive citizens of this country. But if you fight and you destroy these children, they will not be. And you're pushing them far more towards drug use, alcohol abuse, and other issues such as fighting and maybe, God forbid, ending up in jail. And unfortunately, I've seen it where sometimes it all leads back to the divorce. The children were put in the middle, and they suffered tremendously from it. So keep them the hell out of the divorce.
Yeah. Sage advice. You're doing a lot of important work out there, Mendy. I mean, when you think about the divorce rates in the United States, are they increasing at the moment, or what? Do you have some stats on that?
Some odd reason, in 2017, I've had a lot more clients coming in now than I did last year. I don't know if that it to this point in the year. Whether that's because the divorce rate is going higher or not, I don't know. But the issue is, I know that the divorce rate, I think someone said is at 53%, but I don't know where I heard that, but it's going higher.
Yeah.
I will say one thing. I found, especially from my clients, some people get married for the wrong reasons, some people get divorced for the wrong reasons. It's the idea that people think different things than maybe they did 30 years ago. However, if you and I both know this, 40, 50 years ago, domestic violence was something you had to hide.
Yes, exactly.
Whereas now you have hundreds, if not thousands, of groups who help people in that situation, where now it's not a embarrassment as much, at least. It's still somewhat embarrassing for people, based on what they tell me in my office. They don't want the world to know about it, but they're less likely to hide it than they did 40, 50 years ago, where people would stay together for 80 years. I want to actually tell you something sad. I did a paper with a professor of mine in law school years ago. In it, and I'm going to ask you if you know this answer. You know the amount of times a woman, and we use women here because it's what they use scientific studies for, how many times a woman has to be abused by her spouse before she leaves her husband?
I don't know the exact figure, but I would imagine it would be multiple times, at least
8.
4 or 5. Yeah.
8 times on average. But the people don't understand is that includes the women who leave the first time, and it includes the women who never left. So the scariest part is a man. Again, I'm using the man here only because this is a study that I wrote with my professor, was that a woman has to be abused 8 times on average for her to decide that this is not for her and she has to leave.
Astounding.
And women have to know, and men, whether they're gay, straight, or it doesn't matter what they are, no one has the right to hit you. If they do, leave. If you can't leave, call the police. I don't care if there's a green card issue. I don't care what it is. You have to protect your safety and that of your children, if they're there or they exist, first. Because I've had enough clients who I've helped by giving them to immigration attorneys to help them with the domestic violence issues, that it's not an issue for those who are not here legally, or those who have green cards. Let's say their spouses have sponsored them for a green card, and they're scared that they'll lose it. It's not an issue anymore. It's 2017. The government understands that domestic violence exists, and they'll work with you to keep you here as long as you have a legal green card. But also, if there's domestic violence, the police do not ask you, are you here legally? They don't care. They're trying to protect us. And that's it. If something happens, call the police. Go to family court. Do something. Protect yourself and your children. Because if you don't, that you will suffer, unfortunately, physically, and the children, if they exist, will suffer immeasurable harm, both physically and mentally, from the abuse.
Well, Mendy, this is a great talk, and this is why we're actually doing this series of Let's Talk Divorce. So at this stage, I can just imagine somebody sitting out there and listening to this and learning all these great insights from you, and they're probably asking themselves, well, who is Mendy White? He's sharing all of these great tips, but who is he? So could you, in your own words, just briefly tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of your background, your education, and your experience as it relates to the topic of protecting children in divorce?
Sure. I went to law school in Truro Law in Long Island. I graduated in 2011. I became a prosecutor in the district attorney's office in Kings County for 3 years. I then got married and have 2 wonderful children, and I went and I went into private practice, where I help protect people and their rights. I practice primarily divorce law, with a minority of my cases dealing with criminal law, and I do my best to help people, no matter what their background is.
And do you really enjoy what you're doing then, Mendy?
Strangely enough, yes. But I will say one thing. Whenever I have a very scary or sad case, domestic violence, molestation, or anything where there's a really, really horrible situation going on, it makes me thankful for what I have. You know, you don't realize how lucky you are until you see the horrors of other people's lives. So as strange as it is, it brings my wife and I closer because she and I realize how lucky we are to have what we have, knowing what these people are going through.
Keeping the main topic of protecting children in divorce in mind, and thinking about that person who sat there today listening to our conversation, what would be your absolute best tip to that listener today then, Mendy?
I think it's a few things. One, do not discuss the case with them. Secondly, do not badmouth the other parent. Third, be respectful of the other parent when their children are exchanged during visitation. 4, be adults. This is a person you had a child with. This is a person, whether you're married or not, you chose to create a life. And there has to be some respect for each other. You can hate each other. That's not an issue. However, the children need to see that you have respect for them because this is their mother and this is their father, and they have to be shown how to treat them. Because if a mother or father badmouths the other parent, the children are not going to respect that parent, and they're going to cause more issues, such as the father being the good father, just buying whatever the child wants, while the mother has to be the punisher because she has to live with the child every day. Obviously, that's an example. I'm not trying to say one or the other, but don't raise the children separately. Raise them together, even if they're separate. Have a plan. Agree you're going to do this. If you can't agree on it, get a third person to mediate it. A friend, a rabbi, an imam, a priest. It doesn't matter. Somebody to help guide you to get through this, because otherwise you will be in court for years. You will lose thousands upon thousands of dollars in attorney fees, and the children will suffer.
Mendy, it's been a great conversation. For the people out there that are listening right now, how can they connect with you? Where would they find you, Mendy?
Right now, they can reach me. Facebook is the Law Office of Menachem White. Twitter, it's White Law. Instagram, it is White Law Group.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today, Mendy. It's been a blast, a really interesting conversation. So thank you, Mendy White, for sharing with us today. And thank you to you, the listener, for joining us on this very insightful and informative conversation. Mendy has certainly proved that he's an educator and an advocate, and certainly a trustworthy advisor for his clients' success. And he's certainly one of the top family law attorneys in Brooklyn, New York. So with that said, I'm Stewart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more leading divorce professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Divorce Conversations. So until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.